So different types of clinical trials. So there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. And something that can be confusing when we're talking about this is that there's the phase of the study, there's the stage of the study. So there's a lot of different terms that can be used interchangeably, and so it can be confusing. But overall, generally, new compounds or new combinations of compounds will progress from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 studies. So let's talk about what those are and how these studies are run. So a phase 1 clinical trial. So when we're talking about a phase 1 study, this is generally either a new drug or a new combination of drugs. So this could be anywhere from a drug that's being tried in humans for the very first time, where all the prior data has been in animal models and cell culture models, or it can be a new combination of drugs. So oftentimes when we talk about a phase 1 clinical trial, our mind kind of jumps to that first in human scenario. But when considering a clinical trial, it's really important to talk to your doctor about how much prior data is there about this drug, because it might be a new combination of drugs that have already been used to treat other types of diseases that are now just being used together. But the main goal of a phase 1 clinical trial is to determine the correct dose and schedule of the medication, and also what the side effects of the medication are. And so a phase 1 study, usually the primary endpoint is not how well does the treatment work. It's really trying to determine, is the dose correct, is the schedule correct, and what are the side effects? And so this can occur in different ways. So sometimes phase 1 studies are dose escalation studies. When we talk about a dose escalation study, that means different groups of patients receive different doses of the drug. So a typical dose escalation study is a 3+3 design, where the first 3 patients that are enrolled to the study receive a lower dose of the drug, and then if they do not have significant side effects during their first month on treatment, then the next group of patients receives a higher dose of the drug. So it's important to know when you're talking about a phase 1 study if it's a dose escalation study, and if so, where it is in the dose and how many patients have received that dose so far. Now, phase 1 studies oftentimes have a lot of extra tests involved. Because these are new drugs or new combination of drugs, they oftentimes have multiple blood tests that happen, what we call pharmacokinetic analysis or PK analysis. A PK test is a blood test that checks to see what the level of the drug is in your blood. And so that sometimes is done before you get the drug, and then 30 minutes, an hour, 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours after the drug. Those can be long days. So it's important to know if a study has PK analysis. And then these studies will also sometimes have pharmacodynamic analysis or PD studies. And these oftentimes involve doing tumor biopsies and then looking at the actual activity of the drug on the cancer cells. So these studies are usually small studies that enroll about 15 to 30 patients. So when considering a phase 1 trial, I'd say these are the key questions to ask. Has the dose of the drug been established yet, or is it still in dose escalation? How many PK days are there, and what is the PK schedule? Because sometimes, your doctor, they're talking to you about a study, they're trying to get a lot of information conveyed at once, and they forget to tell you that there's 12-hour PK days every week on this study where you're going to have to be in clinic for 12 hours. So it's really important to know that information up front. Are there mandatory biopsies on this study? And does the sponsor of the study provide travel reimbursement? Since these phase 1 studies oftentimes have multiple study visits, sometimes the sponsor who's paying for the study will allow for travel reimbursement, where you can submit the receipts that it takes for you to drive or take the train or travel to clinic, so you can be reimbursed for that. And if they do offer that, you should definitely take advantage of that. You're already working really hard to be on a study. You should get any reimbursement that comes along with it. So once we know what the right dose of a drug is and that it's safe and what the side effects are, it can then progress to a phase 2 clinical trial. So generally, and then there's exceptions to everything I'm going to say here today, but generally in a phase 2 clinical trial, we know the right dose of a drug, and everybody on the study is receiving the same medicine. Generally, these are not randomized studies, though they can be, but usually they're not randomized. There's no placebo. Everybody's getting the same medicine And the primary endpoint of the study is to see how well does it work, how effective is it, which is what we call the efficacy of the drug. And so this type of study will look at both safety and efficacy. And these studies usually enroll about 50 to 100 patients. And sometimes these also have those PK tests or PD tests, other times they don't. So in looking at a phase 2 study, it's important to know how many patients have received the drug or drug combination before. And by the time a drug is in a phase 2 study, we should know what the side effects are. So you should ask, what are the most common side effects, like nausea, fatigue, decreased cell counts? And then you have both your common side effects and your rare but serious side effects. So each drug has its rare but serious side effects, right? Whether that be heart failure or vision problems or severe rash. So it's important both to know what the common side effects are and what the rare but serious side effects are. Again, you want to know if there's PK days, and then always good to ask if the sponsor provides travel reimbursement, because sometimes in the clinic they forget to tell you or they don't remember that the study has that, so it's really important to ask.